Welcome back, everybody. Let's start part 3. In the last one, you saw that I took the tuning condenser out. I'm going to try something that I've never done before, but I've read and heard where people use a dishwasher. So we're going to do that, and once we get done, looks like we may have to, I don't know if this will focus or not. Going to have to probably do a little evaporust. I'm not sure if that's rust or if it's resin. It may be resin. That's not rust. So I think a good cleaning may take that right off there. So let's put that in there. Then what we'll do is we'll come back and we will take some of this stuff apart, so we can get clean this chassis a little bit. I know we're going to have to take probably all 3 of these off. Definitely that off. All left is the transformer, and everything will probably be already disconnected, so we may just pull it out so we can get to the chassis and do some rust work and clean up and go from there. I'm going to start taking some of this stuff apart. I marked the wires coming from the chassis to the speaker to get it up out of the way. Also marked them on my schematic, and you can pick whatever. What I used is I numbered them on the schematic, and also put the colors they're supposed to be on here. And that's just a personal preference. It's up to you. Just any way you can to get them, keep them straight. Now, if I can untie them and get them out of here, and we'll put the speaker somewhere, and we'll address all the little tears and things like that a little bit later on. Mark the leads in here and there. Took the volume and on-off switch out. We'll have to tear that down a little bit later on. Okay, remember this switch was having problems, so I brought it down to the shop. My wife don't like me to spray anything in the house because it gets in our gas logs and stink. Anyway, this is a rechargeable sprayer, and I have mixed some stuff that I've used. Now I passed the formula over to Michael at That Tube Sounds. He's used with quite a bit of success, and I've mixed this up, and it's probably less than a nickel's worth. And so I'm gonna spray this and in the back and work the switch, and then we'll check it for continuity. One squirt, and worked it back and forth 4 or 5 times, and seems to have cleaned it out. I've labeled all the wires coming off the filter caps. There's actually 2 inside here. This has been replaced. At first, you know, when I first video, I said it has not been, but if you'll look, this tape is what you make bandages out of, adhesive bandages. So that's a spacer to make this bigger. So it was a Philco, so I don't believe it's the one that went in this. But anyway, we may end up rebuilding this. Here's a better view of that tape that they used. That would have made a great bandage one day, wouldn't it? Okay, let's go after this antenna coil or transformer. I've taken this block, just took it loose, peeled it back, left everything attached to it. What's holding the coil or transformer is the screw holding this block capacitor in. So I've disconnected the wires, so I'm going to have to loosen this one up in order to get it out. So we will see if I can slip it out without an issue. I don't want to damage it in any way, because this one theoretically is good. And we don't want to mess it up. Here's something I failed miserably on. The grid cap up here. So we're just going to go ahead. We'll end up replacing this because it's cracked. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it off for now. So now it should come out. Should. Okay. Now we have it. I believe this right here, now this one's good, but this is the little winding that's notorious for being open. So we'll check this again before we put it away, but we've got that one out. Let's pull this oscillator coil out. Got to loosen this nut right here. I've done got all the wires. There's a nut here. Also, this is the C3, which is the gimmick capacitor. And then, of course, this is the 6,000 ohm capacitor, which is R6, and this is C7 here. All that should come out together. So let's see if we can get this loose again. All right. Screws out. Let's see if it's a lift out now. Okay. We'll examine this. I can already tell it's green underneath the little piece of plastic, so we'll get something to look at it a little bit closer. Well, I have the IF can and all the wires marked, labeled, and things pulled to the side, and there's a screw right here that holds it. And see if we can get this out without incident. And I did clip the grid cap off the top side this time on this one. So let's see if we can lift this one out without incident. Ooh, that's pretty flimsy. That's just a cover over it there. So let's see if we can get past that. And there we go. And there's the 4 meg resistor there. That has to be replaced with a 2 meg. And what we'll end up doing is cutting it as close as we can here and here, and doing a corkscrew without trying to damage this at all. Definitely don't want to do that. There is what that looks like, guys. Okay, this thing is pretty much stripped. Not sure whether we're going to take this off or not. I think we can be able to access the chassis and work on this rust and clean this up a little bit. Look underneath. That it's pretty well stripped, except for a few wires from the transformer and a few connected. The trimmers and the some to the tubes, and some of these wires will be replaced as we go back. Let's show you what I did. I went, and of course all the block capacitors I just drew underneath. I've got a fairly decent layout with the schematic, but it doesn't give point-to-point wiring. And so I labeled all the block capacitors and the resistors. You already know that we had to pull the oscillator coil because it's got an open feedback loop on it, and we'll address that rewinding that. The antenna coil I pulled because the grid cap wire needs to be replaced. Also, the IF has to have the resistor replaced, and also the grid cap wire replaced. And so that took all the coils out of here. The filter capacitor is going to have to be reworked. We'll restuff that one, and we'll try to make it a little bit different than wires hanging in midair or something like that. But all the resistors are going to have to be replaced except for this 325 over here on the main capacitor where the power is coming in, and this goes to ground, and this is what isolates ground, or the chassis ground from everything, from the center tap. So that was good. So we're going to continue to use that. But it's important, and I've marked a lot of these pins on the schematic. Perhaps you can see this. Let's say here, let's say number 20. Let's see if I can get a better picture of that. Number 20. You can see it's got two capacitors inside that block. Well, one is not grounded. Usually on these blocks, not usually, but sometimes on the block capacitors, number one is to chassis ground. In this case, it is not, but it's usually the common terminal on the block. So this is a tie point, this is a tie point. Okay, pin 3 on that capacitor is grounded. Pin 2, this is a coupling capacitor, and it's tied to here. So I just look, and I took and put the pin numbers on these capacitors, and that's just for quick reference in the future. Doing a little bit more work on the cabinet. I removed a little bit of the veneer on the front and glued some of the others that's in place. Make sure that it's going to stick. You can see this. I missed that. I'm going to have to go back and glue that right there. And anyway, I removed all the rest of the veneer. I've got to come back and sand that somewhat. And then the very bottom of it was cracked and was coming up, so I had to put glue up underneath that and clamping that. So that's where we're at on that. And so let me get some more glue on this. But it's a slow go. You can't get in a hurry putting this stuff together because you got to let the glue set up. And then once we get all these places glued back, piece by piece by piece, once we get it all good and secure, then we'll strip it down and clean it all up and then start putting new veneer back on. Got the chassis cleaned up, had to neutralize some of the rust with naval jelly. Put a little paint on it just to keep it from rusting again. Not the best job in the world, but it'll keep it from rusting. I've rebuilt the block capacitors and also cleaned up the tuning condenser and derusted it somewhat. The coil, I've started looking at it and documenting all the information I possibly can, and I'm gonna, since this is a real important part of this, since a lot of people have responded that these things are notorious for having open windings, I'm gonna put a lot of extra time in showing how to rewind it, how many turns, the direction thereof, etc. And so it'll probably be on in part 4.
But anyway, so far we'll be ready. We're just about ready to start putting this thing back together. So, Larry from the hills of Tennessee, thanks for watching.